Okay, so what I'm going to be looking at today is email cleansing. So if you've got an old list out there that you are wanting to send to, but you've not sent to for a few months, you might be a little bit worried. And that's because some of the data on that list may now be old, and if you do upload it and send to it, you may damage the reputation of your IP address. And if you do that, a couple of things can happen. You won't be able to get all of your good emails delivered, but also you may get a warning from your platform or from your email service provider. They can see that the hard bounce in your list has gone over 4% or 3%, whatever their threshold is, and as a result of that, they're suspending your account, which can bring your entire email marketing strategy to an end swiftly. What then you have to do is you have to go back to them and you have to explain that you've uploaded an old list and that's what's caused the problem. And as a result of that, they will often reactivate your account, but if you've done it more than once, they may actually boot you off the platform completely, which will bring everything to an end permanently. And that's not a good thing, because you will have got subscribers who've created filters based on the email address that you're sending from. And if you suddenly start sending from a different email address, you may find that those filters are no longer working, and you start to have problems. So what we need to do is, if we're looking to send to a list that's not been sent to for, what's the threshold? I would say that the threshold's probably around a couple of months, maybe 60 days. If we look at the churn on, I'm talking about business data here, okay? So I'm not talking about Hotmails. I'll come on to why I'm not going to talk about Hotmails in a moment, but business data, so business domains, they do churn because people leave their jobs, or they move on, or they retire, whatever it is that's going on. We think that churn is probably somewhere in the region of about it can be up to 5-10% a month. So what you've got there is you've got a list that is perhaps 60 days old, having perhaps 10% hard bounce on it. Those email addresses are dead. So when you try to deliver to that list, you're going to get a problem. And that problem may end up with your account being suspended, which we don't want. So it's quite easy to clean those email addresses, and I'm going to show you how to do that in today's video. Before I go on to that, I'm going to explain a little bit about why what I'm about to show you doesn't do consumer emails. So consumer emails are mostly Hotmails, Gmails, stuff that we've seen around for a long time, and a very high percentage is Hotmail, for instance. It's a huge email service, and cleansing a Hotmail email address is extraordinarily difficult, because when we talk to the server, Hotmail server, it doesn't say much back. It doesn't even tell us whether or not that email address exists. It just says, sure, yeah, send anything through to us. But we're not going to tell you whether or not that email is deliverable until we actually try to deliver to it. And then when we try to deliver to it for you, we're only going to tell you that it hard bounced. So if you're looking to cleanse your B2C data, that is a completely different scenario. And if you do want some advice on that, you would need to talk to me directly, or talk to anybody at Email Movers directly that can help with that. What I'm going to show you is how to clean an old B2B email list, or a list that you've just bought. Whatever it is, however you've come by it, you may have scraped it, you may have bought it, you may have collected it over the last few years and you've not sent to it for a while. What I'm going to show you is a tool that we have that can help you to cleanse that data. So in order to do that, I'm going to give you an online demo. So here I am down on the bottom right hand side still, but you've got my screen. So I'm going to show you a file that I've put together first of all, which has got some email addresses in it. There I am. There's my Duncan at emailmovers.com and my contact enhance. I've also got Hotmail in there. I've got a Duncan Plus test in there that does exist because we use Gmail as our email service provider for emailmovers.com. So you can put a plus after your after the local part of your email address, and it will still deliver, but you'll be able to see who that has delivered to. It's quite good if you're delivering to service, but you're not 100% sure what they're going to do with your data. So I might register Duncan plus Sky News at emailmovers.com. And then anybody sending to that email address, I would see that they've sent to my Sky News email address. So it should only really be Sky News sending to that email address, right? But if I suddenly start getting emails from other companies, I know that they've shared my details with other companies. And then I can obviously check to make sure that that's what I had registered for. So that's why the plus is there in that one. So it's still a real email address. We've got mark.zuck@emailmovers.com. Now Mark does not work at Email Movers, and that is a fake email address, or it's an email address that doesn't exist. So hopefully the service will pick that up and send it back. We've got a generic. We've got a Duncan@emailmovers.com dot, which is invalid format. Obviously, email addresses don't have a dot at the end. We've got a temporary email address. You might find if you've got a SaaS service that people use temporary email addresses to gain access to your system, your software, your solutions, free trials, whatever it is. They're not real email addresses. They will never open another email again once they've received the verification email. So we don't really want those guys there. I don't know if EasyMail is a popular one. We do look for the popular ones. And then we've got Duncan@emailmovers.com again, which is a duplicate from the one at the top. So there's a few issues with our list. We've got one that doesn't exist, might have done in the past, but it doesn't anymore. We've got a duplicate here. We've got a free temporary email service. We've got an invalid formatted one. So we've got all sorts of data coming in here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Email Cleansing Online. So it's emailcleansing.com, the domain, pretty simple to remember that. If you've not got an account, you can register by clicking on the register button. And once you've registered, you are able to log in. So I'm just going to go back to my Email Inspector logo. I'm going to click login, and now I am actually going to log in. I've got my username, I've got my password, so I'm going to click login, and that takes me through to the system here. I've done a couple of trials so that I can show you the results, because it takes time for it to actually do the cleanse. Now the cleanse is actually done quite quickly. It's just that there's a big queue because there's a lot of companies using the solution. So I uploaded this at 9:43. So that's been processing a while because it's in a queue basically, but you get a notification anyway. So in order to upload the list, you just click on upload. You go to select file to upload, and then when you've done that, you can see I'm on my desktop. That's the file of email addresses that I'm going to want to cleanse. Click open, and this does a little bit of analysis almost immediately. You can see that there's 10 records in the file. There are 8 unique email addresses, and there is 1 duplicate email in there. If we click on view more details of this list, it tells us a little bit about the 2 that it has removed for us. So we've got 1 with an invalid email format, which was obviously this one here with the .com dot. And we've also got 1 that is a generic. I actually sent a generics. I don't have any issue whatsoever, especially when it is a small business sending to generics. There's no risk on GDPR because they are a generic email address. And on a small business, the generic email is often the one that opens the email. So I recently ran a campaign or built a list for a client who was looking to target hotels, restaurants that use Guestline. They wanted generics, info at, reservations at, bookings at, because they know that those email addresses get opened typically by the person front of house or by the owner of the business. But it's up to you. It identifies them anyway. So once you've uploaded them, you can either select here, validate, or you can just click proceed to cleanse. I'm just going to select validate. And once I've done that, you can see that my email list has now gone for validation, even though there's only 8 on it. So if I now click return to lists, I'm going to actually show you what it is that has found. So you can see here I've uploaded it, and this one has just finished, which is nice, isn't it? Whilst we've been talking. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to show us here that we've got 8 emails in total. 4 are delivering okay, 3 are bad, and 1 is unknown. So what is the difference between these? Well, what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you a little bit about the difference that comes out with. So if we click on download OK emails and then open that, you should be able to see that we've got a few emails that are okay. So we've got a Duncan at emailmovers.com is okay, contactenhanced.com is okay. I left my hotmail.com in there and it's come back as that will be okay. Now, pretty much any Hotmail address that you upload is going to come back as okay. It does not mean that it is okay. It just means that Hotmail have said, yes, send us that email, and not said anything back. So I would suggest that you remove it from your list. Then we have got the Duncan plus test at emailmovers.com, which is the one that we remembered. So those are okay to send. Okay. Then we've got bad. So if we now download those, you can see that you can download them as separate sheets. So this one you could upload straight into MailChimp or your other service provider and you would be off. Now what we've got here is the ones that are bad. So Mark Zuck doesn't work at Email Movers, whoever Mark Zuck is. That's unfortunate. The info at, now it does exist, but it's identified as a generic, so it's listed as bad. It's up to you whether or not you want to send to those or not. As I said, I do. Then we've got Duncan Gledhill at hotmail.cm, which it's realized is not an email. It's actually a common typo that people mistake. I've written CM instead of COM, and if you tried to send to that, you would get a hard bounce from your platform if it didn't do any clever analysis on that email address. Also, don't forget that .cm could be a domain. Hotmail.cm could be a domain, and that email address may not exist at it. So it's got rid of that email address for us. And then finally, we've got an unknown. Now, this is really interesting because if we have a look at the unknown, what we've got here is we've actually got a response from that email service provider, which was the temporary emails, but we can't identify whether or not it is good or whether or not it is bad. So we identify it as unknown, which would suggest it's risky to send. It's risky to send to. So we've got the 8 email addresses that we uploaded. We've got 4 that are deliverable and okay. We've got 3 that we know are bad, and we've got 1 that is unknown. What would I do? I would send to these guys through my premium or premier platform. So if I was using something like MailChimp or AspiroMail, something like that, I would use those email addresses. If I was sending, I would remove these. I would not use them. I would put the generics in. Some platforms don't like you to put generics in. It's important to remember that. Some platforms think that generics are not healthy, which is obviously up to them. AspiroMail does allow you to send to generics, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Unknowns. How do you send to unknowns? Well, there are a couple of platforms out there. Now, AspiroMail does allow you to send to the unknowns. That's okay. However, you are going to get a higher bounce rate than normal. So you need to be careful. I would go small. So if you've got 8,000 that you've uploaded, and we know that 10% are unknown, that would give you 800. I would do them in small chunks. I would probably do them in chunks of maybe a few hundred or 50 at a time, something along those lines, until you've got back the report from AspiroMail telling you which ones it's being able to deliver to and which ones it's not being able to deliver to. The other way in which you could do that as well is by using one of the mail merge plugins for Gmail, putting those into a spreadsheet and then sending an email to them and then looking at the results of that email instead of using a platform, because then you can use up a domain that you may not be using. So if you've got a company domain and that is artdesign.com, then you could create artdesign-mail.com. You could use it just for email. You could put a Gmail account onto there. You could then create your mail merge and send to them very, very slowly. I mean, you know, you could send to them to warm it up. You could send 5 in the first day, 10 in the next day, until eventually you're able to get through hundreds a day because it's been warmed up. Don't forget, you are sending to unknown addresses there, so you are going to have a bit of risk. But if these people have registered on your platform, or if you've bought a list of companies that you know are using Salesforce and you're trying to promote to them or whatever it is, you want to try and get as much out of that list as you possibly can, don't you? So you don't want to just bin them. You do want to find a way of sending to them. So that gives you an idea of how email cleansing, or email inspector we call it, works. You've got some other tools on it which are quite funky. So if you do have people registering on your website, you can use the real-time API. So it will check the email address as people are entering your funnel. So if you've got a form on your website and that form is collecting people's contact details, like their first name, their last name, their email address, you may be using our tool Contact Enhance to enrich that information with, or to enrich that email address with all, company name, their revenue, their size, their location, etc. But you can also use Email Inspector to check that the email address actually exists before allowing them to create an account. Or allowing them to go ahead and create the account, no problem, but knowing that that email address is not right. Now that might be because you're not authenticating your accounts by using a email authentication process, which is normally where you send them a link, and when they click on the link in that email that they've got, they go through to their account. If you're not using that, because it's a lot of companies don't use that because the emails don't get delivered. They get filtered straight into one of the spam filters or sane later filters, something like that. So somebody comes along, registers on your platform, you've spent £28 on Google getting that conversion. You then say, great, thanks so much for registering. We've just sent you an email. Can you authenticate? They go to their inbox and say, I haven't received it yet. And now they have no way of getting back into their account. They might go back to the window if they've got time and just click on send it again. They go back to their inbox, still nothing. They abandon it. Now, that's just cost you £28, and you've now got an issue because that person has forgotten about you. Google did the work, got your message in front of them, your website did the work, got them to put their information in, got them to register, and then the email side or email authentication failed, and you're losing people as a result of that. And that does happen. With a tool like this, you can check that the email address exists on the fly, so you don't have to take them through the authentication process at that moment. You could take them through that process later on, maybe a week later or 48 hours later, but at least they would have gotten into the system and potentially moved further on down the customer journey. So that is pretty much everything that I'm going to talk to you about today. Today was about email cleansing. Please do put some comments in there. If you've got any questions at all, just let me know. And happy cleansing. And with that, I am going to leave you to have a great day.